First of all, I'd like to thank the Orthodox Christian Fellowship and the Secular Student Alliance for inviting me here today. And I'm looking forward to a healthy and a very vigorous debate in a question that's not only academically interesting, but I think one of the central questions of our age. We live in what some people call a post-Christian or a postmodern society, an assessment that I think is generally true. But like most other sweeping claims, they can mean different things to different people. It's prudent then, I think, that in order to make our discussion as beneficial as possible, we first define our terms. The question we are discussing this evening is, can there be morality without God? Now, of course, I argue no, there can't be. But before giving my reasons, let me rephrase the question more in line with which is what I think the fundamentalist atheist presupposition. Atheism, properly understood, allows for no objective existence of anything non-material, not made from matter. Philosophical materialism is the philosophical ground of atheism, a point that anyone familiar with more than the surface character of the atheist claims will recognize as true. As such, it should be noted that atheism is a relatively recent phenomenon, at least the variety we speak of this evening, and as I think anyone, as I said, with a basic familiarity with the question will confirm. And it is recent because philosophical materialism, some people call it scientific rationalism or naturalism, is itself a relatively recent phenomenon. I would argue as a historian that atheism cannot exist except in a Christian society. I would argue that. It's actually an outgrowth of our Christian heritage. So, in the interest of clarifying the question, let me ask it this way. Does atheism acknowledge the independent existence of the transcendent? Put aside the term God for the moment. Okay, right now it has too much surplus baggage, especially in the prevailing cultural debates. When we say God, let's talk right now in terms of transcendent, because the point I'm making is not a religious point, it's a philosophical point. And it's this. Does atheism even acknowledge the independent existence of the transcendent or any being or even principle apart from matter, apart from that which can be quantified using the tools of science? The answer, at least if the atheist is true to his premises, must be no. Just so you understand, I'm not making a moral judgment on that at all. Okay? It's not a moral judgment, so don't read that into my words. What I'm doing is trying to draw a philosophical distinction that I think is true. Now, does this mean that the atheist himself is immoral? Of course not. It doesn't mean that at all. There are plenty of moral atheists. It does mean, however, that the atheist, despite his embrace of moral principles and sometimes even his passionate defense of moral positions, and which even I, as a Christian, would say are the right positions, the atheist and I can be co-laborers on some issues if we both agree and decide that what we're fighting against is indeed an injustice. We can go to war together, even if he draws his principle from a different source than I do. Okay? So it's not saying that the atheist is immoral. Don't make that mistake. So, but despite the passionate defense, despite the depth of conviction, you cannot say, philosophically speaking, that the depth of that moral principle he's following is anything greater than either private conviction or social convention. No transcendent reference, no authority beyond the atheist's own conviction, besides the rightness of some action over others, exists, philosophically. Philosophical materialism, the notion that all reality is grounded in matter, does not allow for that. From the view of one holds to transcendent causes then, which would be me, and in my case, the God of Abraham, understood within the framework of Orthodox Christianity. That a definition of reality cannot be reduced to matter alone. That matter is not the source of what defines and shapes our ideas of meaning, aesthetics, justice, and so forth. The atheist might indeed hold moral views incongruent to my own. In fact, might even be more moral of a person than I am. It could be. But the value he places on the one moral act over another is necessarily derivative, which is to say, dependent on a view of the universe, of nature and reality that is not his own. Atheists take umbrage at that statement, and I can understand why. They get offended when I state that their moral views are derived from the categories and grammar of the Christian moral tradition. And necessarily so, because the Christian moral tradition has shaped what we know of Western culture. If an atheist says, for example, that killing is wrong, he's not drawing from the first principles of his philosophy. He is borrowing from the precept first delivered in the text of Christian scripture, the narrative of Moses descending from the mount, which indicates to us that precept, although it is given to us through the mouth of Moses, and thus within human conflict that Matt describes, I don't deny that at all, and never would, he's right about that, has a source and origin in the God of Moses, which is to say that it has a transcendent source and origin, something beyond the mere molecules that made of Moses, if you will, or even the molecules of the text that gives us the story. One could argue, of course, that non-Christian cultures also recognize that killing was wrong, and I would agree with this point. There is no disputing that. But the point here is not that Christianity has an exclusive claim on moral truths. They don't. But that even other religions still recognize what I consider an elementary fact of the universe. Man cannot live by bread alone, which is to say man is more than the molecules that shape his body. These religions, like Christianity, reject the materialist claim that all that exists is matter, that which can be quantified. One final point, and I don't know how to reconcile this with the atheist claim. I really don't, and I think this is one area of great divergence, is that I believe that truth is a category of existence, a transcendent category of existence, which is to say truth exists apart from any comprehension that I may have of it. Okay, follow me here. I believe that truth is a category of existence, a transcendent category of existence, which is to say that truth exists apart from my comprehension or understanding of it. I may think that I know the truth. Maybe I really even know what is true. But my belief in what is true does not bring that truth into being. In other words, truth exists independent of whether or not I believe in it, just as light exists independent of my ability to see it. True, if I am blind, I don't experience the light. It has no effect in me. But the light nevertheless exists. I'm not sure how the atheist can assert the existence of any enduring truth. The best he can do, I think, is assert that truth has a pragmatic character. And with that, I would agree. It just happens to be what most people believe, rightly or wrongly, and its effect is dependent not on any objective existence, but dependent on the depth of belief by what they believe is indeed the truth. The atheist is correct in this, of course. I won't deny that. I won't argue with that. But not completely, and that's my point, which is to say that the truth, and thus morality, can never escape a kind of continuous relativism in the atheist paradigm, imprisoned, that is, to the shifting winds of the day. Thank you.